Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of CreatorCast, and today I have a very exciting new guest, someone whose content I've been enjoying for years, and who actually played a pivotal role in inspiring me to get into making long-form video game retrospective content myself. Today I'm being joined by the illustrious Avalanche Reviews. Thanks so much for joining me, man. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So I just had some questions to ask you throughout the video, and we're just going to chit chat and talk about, whatever is on our mind. But I've been opening a lot of these interviews with the same question, and I think it applies to you as well. Can you tell me about the name Avalanche Reviews? Kind of where did that come from?
I guess to be specific, it came from an era of YouTube when you would put reviews in your YouTube channel name, I guess. Avalanche from Final Fantasy VII, one of my favorite games of all time. Yeah. And I don't think I thought about it too much further than that. I was in a car. I had just seen, thank you, Carmelo. I was in a car, and me and my landlord and my wife had just watched Epica and, oh Christ, who was it?
The band Epica?
Really cool. Epica was super good live, and this is gonna kill me. I know the guitarist's name is Michael Romeo, but I can't remember the name of their band to save my life. But anyways, it was a really cool metal show. And then my landlord, on the way home, because we lived in South Florida, you had to drive really far, like 4 hours to go see shows sometimes. So on the way home, we're sitting there and chilling. She's making conversation. She's like, "What have you been up to?" And then I was like, "I'm thinking about starting a YouTube channel." And that's when I spoke it into reality. And she's like, "What's it going to be called?" And I was like, because I hadn't thought about it that far. And I was like, "Okay, Final Fantasy VII, Avalanche. I want to review games, Avalanche Reviews."
Wow. And it's really paid off for you. I mean, how long ago must that have been? 14, 13?
Something like 17 years ago, maybe 16, somewhere around that neighborhood.
Do you remember when you put your first video out, or?
I don't remember the date, but I remember it vividly. It was Silent Hill 3. Me and a buddy were working together on a website project. He was going to call it Thrash Metal Gamer. And he was like, "Do you want to add reviews?" Because I absolutely love Silent Hill 3. So that was going to be my first. And I basically took what I had written for an article on that website and applied it to a video review. And yeah, I have a parrot now, apparently. So Silent Hill 3, when I started the channel, I was like, well, I've already gotten all this work done. We might as well make that a video. And, oh, Jesus Christ. This is going to be a chaotic interview. We've only recently had her for like 2 months or so she is feeling herself right now.
Believe me, I know a thing or two about having young cats in the house.
Yeah. But yeah, I loved Silent Hill 3, and I wanted that to be my first video because it was such like an important narrative experience for me. And that was the worst video anyone's ever made before. I still keep it live on my channel, but the last time we were looking at it on, I had a buddy here, Benny, and we were checking it out, and YouTube wouldn't let me watch it for some reason, which sucks because I like keeping all my old stuff publicly viewable, even if it's really bad, because most of it is.
Right.
But it was really tough, dude. It was a really nasty video. I didn't really know how to edit, and I was recording the vanilla PC version of SH3 that has a double VSync buffer. So if the FPS fall even 1 frame below 60, the game, so it's a double buffer. So if it falls 1 frame below 60, it defaults to 30 until it can achieve 60 again. So like every few seconds of my captured footage, it would slow down by half. And the way I recorded audio was with a Sony 8mm Handycam, and I would speak into its microphone and then plug that into a capture device so I could record just the audio back.
Wow.
It was quite the difference between what I have now.
Do you think that that played any role in how pivotal like getting into the tech is in your channel now? Because you're really into like capture card equipment and using analog, so you don't do a lot of emulation, because a lot of the stuff you've compared ports, you've compared different footage, you go really like analog with it. So do you think that experience played a role in your fascination with the way that you capture your footage?
Yeah, I would say so for sure. I tend to be one of those guys who like falls into something. So when you start doing this as a hobby, it's really easy to go like, oh, okay, when it's time to upgrade the channel. Because once the channel starts making any money at all, like, there was a period where I'd make $100 a year. So after, 2 years, it's like, okay, I could buy a Blue Yeti microphone for like $99. So you start doing research. And then once you have the Blue Yeti and you're figuring that out, you have to start, okay, well, how do I EQ this microphone? Or what's best recording practices? Do I get an arm? All of these things naturally progress as you start making videos. So I started, like I told you, from the bare minimum that you could physically achieve. And then from there, every tiny upgrade that I made, whether it's building a new PC or learning new editing software, required me to do a butt ton of research, which would lead me down the path of upgrading again in the future. And it pun intended, is Avalanche. It starts out real small, and then next thing you know, you have thousands of dollars of video switchers and upscalers and console mods and audio equipment and capture cards, and it's interesting. Yeah, so I've depreciated my life in that sense.
Yeah, that's interesting to me because I tend to take the opposite approach. The way I'm always interested in what is the most accessible kind of way that I can run this on the PC, because I'm trying to figure out a way that I can represent the experience that would be most easily achieved to the common viewer, right? So a lot of people aren't going to feel like going through the hassle of getting all the analog equipment and everything. So I'm thinking, what is the easiest and most efficient way to get this running in the highest quality that doesn't involve all of that? So I tend to try to find like optimal emulation settings for stuff, or like decompilations. So I did a video on Perfect Dark once where I used... It's not a PC port per se, but it is like a decompilation of the N64 ROM, and it allows you to run the original Perfect Dark like a PC port. Like you can change the frame rate, the resolution. You can play mouse and keyboard, and it completely changes how that game plays. And I'm thinking about doing one for Jack and Daxter because they just finished decompiling that game's ROM, so now you can play it on PC. Like with,
Interesting.
like unlock
Those
frame rate
projects are so cool.
They're
like
the
the
best.
Star Fox and Zelda ones, they're amazing.
I love the fact that they exist because they're effectively porting certain games to PC that the IP holders they probably don't even know they own it, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's something that I really like looking into. So it's interesting that I think that's part of why I like watching your videos so much, because that's something I would never do. I would never go through the trouble of acquiring all of that hardware to like play different variations and like compare ports. So I'm watching you do it, be like, wow, this was a lot of work that I wouldn't do.
Yeah. I think honestly that's the appeal there, is because most people, I mean, obviously, I have the RetroTink 4K, which is like $800 or $900. That's way too much for a lot of people to own, which is good. You probably shouldn't own the RetroTink 4K, but that's kind of like what I enjoy about this whole process, is giving people an idea of how the video game would look on their console in the most ideal conditions, right? And if someone sees a review from me and decides to emulate, that's perfect. I mean, the idea is to show people games that they might enjoy, or give them some sort of entertainment for games they already did enjoy. But it's more of like a personal thing for me, just being able to. I like the look of real console video output, and I like upscaling the video after the fact, because with an emulator, you're internally upscaling and increasing the resolution at which the game is operating in the moment, where I like taking the finished video output and upscaling that to higher resolutions, because it makes for a really accurate look. Even though it is at a higher resolution than normally operate, you still see the jaggies, you still see some of the video flaws, and I really get into that. But it's something that I don't expect anyone else to get into, and not a lot of people are going to be able to see PS2 games running at 4K off of real video hardware. So my videos become a nice, for someone like you, You
Yeah.
should not do all the stuff that I do. It's not recommended at all. So you get a chance to see what that stuff looks like in someone's hands who has really bad money management skills.
I mean, I have bad money management skills too, but I don't spend it on upscalers and whatnot. But that is
Yeah.
something that's very unique about your channel. I think the only other channel that I frequently watch that does something similar is G-Man Lives, but he started doing it because of you. So
Yeah.
that
That
just
was a
trickled
good
down from
time.
you
He was
anyway.
in DMs. He's like, "All right, listen, you gotta give me the crash course." And I was like, "Okay, strap in. Let's
Oh yeah,
do
no,
this."
he's great. He featured in my my Quake video last month. I'm gonna try to rope him into being on the show soon as well. But yeah,
Nice.
man, I always every time I watch one of your videos, I'm always like ready to hear about some kind of technical aspect.
Hell yeah.
So recently, you put out your Stalker 2 video, and you're kind of notorious for saying boldly, there will never be a Stalker 2. This game
Oh, yeah.
will not come out. It's not happening. You've said
Yep.
it many times. There will not be a Stalker 2. So,
Publicly, yeah.
and you just put out your Stalker 2 video, which, I watched through it, but I just wanted to get some of your thoughts here, kind of an elevator version of what do you think of Stalker 2 so far?
In love with it. Absolutely love it. It's hard for me to recommend it to people because it is so Stalker. It's so accurate to the original experience. And that original experience was tough to get into. It's a very, upwards learning curve. And it does not play like your average first-person shooter would. So a lot of your instincts will work against you in the game. That being said, the idea is to make the video so entertaining and to show so many of the good aspects that people who would be willing to take that plunge would be inspired to from watching the video. But realistically, it's just me gushing over how much I personally love that game,
Yeah.
and not so much like, oh yeah, I'd recommend you play it, because I do. But at the same time, maybe you shouldn't.
Well,
It's
yeah,
really
you got to
weird.
know what you're getting into. That's such a difficult line for me, especially recently. I found myself struggling with this idea of, particularly with sequels, a video game managing to find some kind of middle ground between being like unique and interesting and almost like niche compared to accessible and readily available to the more common public. I've had kind of a love-hate relationship with Doom: The Dark Ages. I don't know if you've seen me complaining on Twitter about that recently, but me and Doom go way, way, way back. I was a child, like less than 10, playing like Doom and Doom 2. And then when I played Doom 3, I loved Doom 3. I didn't know what metal music was until I put Doom 3 into my Xbox. I hadn't heard a metal song before then. And when I heard the Doom 3 theme, it like literally changed my life, because I was like, this is the best thing I've ever heard. I need more of this. And I went like seeking to try to find more of whatever the hell that was, that Doom 3 theme. Like I have the entire, I learned to play the song. And so it's a very important franchise to me. So seeing Doom: The Dark Ages look not like Doom at all has been very hard. And then I saw yesterday they put out this ad, and it was like written on the post. It was like the most accessible Doom yet, and I was like, you're saying that like it's a good thing. Like Doom, the original Doom and Doom 2, even back in the 90s, weren't known for being like fun and accessible. They were known for being like shocking and edgy. Back in the 90s, like things were different. Like you didn't have video games coming out with like heads on pikes and like demon runes built onto walls and like blood rivers. Like that wasn't super commonplace. And to see Doom: The Dark Ages kind of like turn its nose up at the like dark, edgier stuff that it used to be is kind of, and also they took out the jump function. I don't know if you're aware of that.
No, that's strange.
You can't jump in Doom: The Dark Ages. There's no jump.
Which I guess would be more accurate to the originals, but a
Yeah.
really weird thing to do in a modern day game.
Yeah, especially when 2016 and Eternal kind of like shifted the way modern shooters play with how movement oriented they were. So I don't know. I haven't played the game yet, so I can't talk too much about it. But the point I was getting at was, it didn't feel good to look at this new game trying its best to cater to everyone except me, the core fan base. So I look at something like Stalker 2 and I'm like, wow, this looks like a game that is only interested in recapturing its core fan base. Stalker 2 looks like a game that is looking at the people who loved Stalker 1 and saying, hey, we made this for you. And that's hard also because you want the game to succeed when it does that. You want to see the game that pulls back to you, the audience, do well, but it might not because that core demographic might not be super big. So that's just such a hard line to ride. And I've been trying to figure out in my own head, like, what is it that I, as the core demographic of said product, want? I want it to do well, but maybe not so well that it forgets about me, the fan base, you know?
I think the gaming industry may be shifting into an era where highly specific game design, like Stalker 2, is achievable again, because for a very long time, and you know, this is obviously still the case, but game budgets, development budgets have ballooned so out of control that we've reached a point of diminishing returns. The more money you throw at a game, you know, the less stuff you're getting for your money. I think now developers are starting to see that you can highly specify a video game towards a very specific crowd. Like my go-to example is from Resident Evil 2 and 3 and Code Veronica to Resident Evil 4. Resident Evil 4 did really well, so Capcom's like, okay, now we're catering to this audience, which, as far as I was concerned, wasn't necessarily the core audience of Resident Evil, but a bunch of people who had come in. And, you know, it was a timing thing. The GameCube was huge. The PS2 was the biggest thing on earth. Everybody had a PS2.
Yeah.
So Resident Evil 4 was entering people's lives when they were getting into middle school, coming home from school and watching Toonami and, you know, Cowboy Bebop and TV. Like, it was a lot of people's first look at Resident Evil. And Capcom was like, oh, the first timers. Yeah, this is who gets the series now. But I think nowadays we've sort of shown with games like Stalker 2 that you can put a AAA budget behind something and devote it specifically to a core audience versus including crafting and, you know, your typical open world Far Cry type, a jack of all trades, master of none approach. So I think we may be slowly gliding towards that future now, because I don't think game budgets can continue to get bigger because the returns are getting, you know, we're seeing AAA flops left and right right now. So I think that's probably going to be the lesson the industry learns is maybe turn-based RPGs are something that a AAA developer can invest in. Squaresoft, you know, like maybe we can make just a edgy, gory first-person shooter, and it doesn't necessarily have to cater towards people who want to craft or people who want to explore open-world environments or whatever else is the common thing of the day.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, God, you said it best, man. Like, there was a time period, I think, very recently where they were throwing everything at the wall in some of these games, and I would play it and I'd be like, why is this feature here? Like this, like crafting is a good one, because there was a time where every other game had like a crafting system. I was like, this game doesn't need this, man. You didn't have to put this in here. It's like half baked anyway. It's not very good.
Which isn't to say that crafting isn't fun in video games. Because, you know, I play stuff like I really love the Dead Island series.
Oh, you love the Dead Island series?
Yeah, it's a guilty pleasure. Wow. They're so bad, but they're so good. But yeah, you just collect, you know, trinkets here and there. You repair weapons. You can create them from stuff that you've looted from like suitcases and stuff. So it can work, but it's not going to work in every single scenario. And the same thing goes for progression systems with like skills and experience and stuff. That's not necessary in every game, you know, and sometimes it can sort of take away the core experience of a video game. So, you know, like I said, I think we're starting to see an opening in the market where people who just enjoy a game because they like that specific play style can start to be catered to again, versus we need everybody to play this game.
Yeah, you lose something in the process whenever you try to open the gate of accessibility so wide that no one can be left out. You have now removed the uniqueness that made people want to even be there to begin with. So the gate's wide enough for everyone to get in now, but no one's really interested in walking through. It's just the way it is. So I think I had a couple more questions I wanted to ask you. I wanted to ask, what do you think your favorite video was that you get to work on in 2024? You know, we're coming into 2025 now. So looking back, thinking about your channel, what do you think maybe was like your favorite video to work on last year?
I'm going to cheat a little bit. It's not necessarily one video, but I think my favorite thing in 2024 has been looking at indie developed survival horror games, all of them. Crow Country, Conscript, Alyssa, Tormented Souls. Just seeing them flood into the market, do really well enough, you know, for companies to make sequels to them and stuff. It's been a joy because that's my little heart genre, you know, the one that stays in here. And it's great being able to play brand new interpretations of this genre that I know so well. I know exactly what it's going to do before it does it, but they have these really fresh takes on it and these new mechanics they include, while still, like we were talking about, catering specifically to survival horror fans.
Yeah.
You know, stuff like Hollow Body feeling more like a Silent Hill game and Tormented Souls feeling like a combination of the two. Like, you really start to see people get very creative with a limiting like structure around the video game. And that's what we like so much about retro games, is you have these limiting factors that developers had to be really creative about overcoming. And I'm starting to see that in the indie scene. So my favorite thing of all 2024 is just being able to get my hands on these survival horror games and see where the genre is going. You know, it's like it's moving in a direction, but it's doing it so slowly, these incremental changes to the genre, but it's still staying here in survival horror world. And that's, I mean, I couldn't ask for anything more than that.
Yeah. I think that's a good answer. You know, some of it's interesting you talk about limitations, because you're right. There were so many iconic games back in the day that had these cool ideas and mechanics that we were like, wow, this is so creative. But a lot of them were just because the team was trying to overcome some kind of either technological or budgetary limitation.
Yeah,
I mean,
for sure.
it's notorious that the original Metal Gear was a stealth game because they couldn't figure out how to put enough enemies on the screen to make it an action game. Like, that's why it became
Evil. We all love pre-rendered backgrounds, but that was just to save on resources. They could throw more polygons on screen, and it all made for really interesting stuff. And nowadays, the limiting factor is how much money you have, which is not quite as interesting to see people overcome. But I like seeing someone give themselves a bit of a constraint, and then seeing how they creatively work around that constraint while still delivering a really interesting product.
Gosh, my it's almost sad to say, but an old friend of mine and I used to talk about films because we noticed this pattern that if a film we were like excited for was reporting that like, oh, everything went really smoothly, you know, and the actors were like, yeah, I had a great time on set, we noticed that movie tended to be like kind of mediocre. But whenever we would see movies where the actor would be like, yeah, shooting that film was hell, that movie would be like this really good movie. I mean, if you look at some of these masterpieces, I mean, Kubrick is obviously like the go-to example, but people would be like, yeah, working with him was the worst. Then the movie's great. I mean, you had like The Shining, but filming The Shining
I was about
sucked.
to say The Shining. Yeah.
But that's a great film.
Jack Nicholson was like having an emotional breakdown the entire time.
And I almost have this theory. It's just kind of speculative on my part that art almost demands like kind of a blood sacrifice, metaphorically. Like if you're having a great time the entire time, it's almost like you're damning the product. Like, you're not trying hard enough. Something is missing. Like, you have to like pour some kind of like suffering into it to show that you overcame something, and then that product will be better. I'm still workshopping this theory that I've had in my head for years, but there's got to be something to it. Because I've watched a couple of movies where I'm like, you know, I thought that was going to be better, and then I'll go look at the interviews and the cast and crew, like, yeah, that was a delight to make. I'm like, oh well, something was missing in this production, you know?
Yeah.
I've kind of noticed that with games as well.
I think modern day Metallica is probably the best example of that. You have to suffer a bit, because otherwise we can hear when you're not trying to overcome any obstacles, and you just get in the studio and be like, yeah, that sounds good. We'll put it on the track and call it a day, and that's it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you really can. Metallica is a good example. I don't know if you listen to this band, but I've been listening to a lot of Bullet for My Valentine recently. They have a pretty good discography, but there's like an album or two in the middle that are kind of not super great. And I was watching an interview with the vocalist recently where he even acknowledges, he was like, yeah, I just don't know if we were going through enough for those albums to really hit the same as like the earlier ones or even like the later ones. Like there is just something, there's a sincerity to when you're like, even like Quake or Doom, like they were on such a grinded schedule to finish those games. And it's kind of a notorious like trivia that John Carmack knocked the walls down in the office so that he could make sure people were working and they weren't goofing off. Like that was,
that's the origin point of the phrase "when it's done" was that production schedule.
Yeah, when it's done, and then that carried over to like Daikatana, but nothing could save that game. It's actually not that bad when you put all the patches and stuff in. I've been playing that. Have you ever played Daikatana?
I remember back in the day as a kid seeing magazine advertisements for Daikatana, and at the time, PC games had a very distinct look. It was very dark. Character models were really blocky, and textures were just painted onto the 3D model. Mm-hmm. And I remember that specific look of that. And what's that game with the little baby cherub?
I know what you're talking about, but I don't remember the name of it.
I completely forget it. It's from Shiny Entertainment, the MDK guys. I completely forget.
I think
Messiah.
Ross Scott did a video on that. Is on his channel, The Accursed Farms.
Yeah. So like that dark, blocky, very flat-looking texture look like built my idea of what PC games look like, because I didn't have a PC that could run those games, but I was constantly, when my mother would go to the grocery store reading through game mags, and that's what I always saw. And like, that's, to me, like that's what PC games like look like in my head.
Yeah, it's kind of like my favorite aesthetic ever. It's almost like cyber goth, for lack of a better word, like industrial cyber gothic. It's like gothic, but it's like technological. Yeah, like Quake 2 had that similar look as well. It was that just where the technology was at that point, mixed artistically. And then every game had like breakbeat industrial soundtracks. All of them sounded like that. Well, the PC ones anyway. You ever played Daikatana before?
Mm-hmm.
I've been playing through it for the first time here in the past couple of days. I got it. I scored it for like 89 cents on a sale on Steam, and then I patched it. It's not that bad actually when you patch it up.
It's not terrible. I mean, like the fact that I played it back in the day, like 5 or 6 years after it released, and your companions could die at that point. And I think with the modern patch, you can make it so they don't.
That
really changes the game. But before, the difficulty was mostly from your companions dying, and they could like kill themselves. So it was a pretty rough time. But I always appreciated what was trying to be done there. They were trying to add more to first person shooting.
Very ambitious.
Being able to like level up the Daikatana and stuff. It's a small thing, but back in the day, you just didn't see that very often in first person games, and they're mostly, first person story based RPGs or something. If you did.
Yeah, Romero's love for D&D was definitely bleeding through into Daikatana. I mean, that was the origin of like the original Doom even, and Quake. All of that came from id Software sitting around playing D&D. So a lot of that definitely bled over into Daikatana. To tie it back into what we were talking about earlier, we were talking about like struggle and overcoming and dealing with issues while you're producing content. What are some of the biggest obstacles you've had to overcome on your channel? What are some like big obstacles or struggles that you've faced in running the channel and making videos?
I think at first it was more logistical. I was doing a lot, and YouTube was successful enough that I could see a return on a lot of my time investment, but not so much that I could make it full time. Mm-hmm. So I was working as a cook at a local like pub style bar, and I would do that in the mornings, and then at nights I would come home, take a shower, go back to the bar and do security. And then I was going to college, and I was lifting and learning Japanese and doing YouTube, which was essentially like I was doing YouTube at the rate that I'm doing it now, basically. So I was burning myself at both ends, and it was terrible. So I think at first, when the channel started to do well, I think after I got past like 10,000 subscribers, when I could see that there was some sort of a return in this, like a future in it almost. It started demanding, just personally, I wanted to put more into it, because if there were going to be people who supported me on Patreon with their hard-earned money, it's best that I put my best foot forward and give them something that's worthy of, because that's like a big deal.
Right.
They don't have to do that.
No, they're doing it. Yeah.
It's something that we were sort of. I know you're not as old as I am, but you and I both, I think, got ushered into the era of paying content creators for content. But like, imagine, in 2001, the idea of like, yeah, I make these web videos and people pay me to do it. It's like, what?
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, they don't have to at all. They could see them for free if they want. It's a wild idea. But keeping that in mind, it was certainly worth it for me to put a lot of effort in, and for me to learn more and invest into the channel, which, YouTube wasn't making so much money that it paid for itself at that point, because a 4K capture card can be pretty pricey, especially back when those things were new. Sound equipment, upscaling equipment, which isn't necessary, but it's the kind of stuff that I enjoy doing. So like, at first it was definitely getting it done while trying to get my life in order. I live in Tokyo now, and the idea was for me to move there the entire time. So I went to college so I could get a job here. Luckily, I ended up being able to do YouTube, and I could cover myself in tattoos now, and I don't have to worry about, the nightmare that is working in Japan. But at the time, I was trying to set myself up for that future. So me and my wife were working really hard, saving a lot of money, working extra hours, overtime if we needed to. And then we were trying to pay for college mostly out of pocket. So there was a lot of challenges at first. But I think once I went full-time with YouTube, the biggest challenge was managing myself. Because YouTube is really easy to work on when you have something to look forward to when you get off of work. Like if you spend all day behind like a cash register, or like me standing in front of a prep table and dicing ingredients and cooking chutney and stuff, it's really easy for you to sit and think all day. When I get home, I'm writing that script, I'm capturing that footage. I forgot I have to put this thing in there. Oh, this is an interesting idea I had. I'll include that in the script or whatever. It's really easy to do that. But when you wake up and you have a million options available, you could do anything. It's really, yeah, you have to stay on top of yourself. And it's not something that I've gotten terribly great at over the years, but I would say that's definitely one of the challenges. And then the biggest challenge for me personally, recording voiceovers.
That's the worst. It's the worst.
Yeah.
I hate it too.
It's terrible.
I hate it too.
I hate the mouth noises that can. I like to activate the proximity effect with this SM7B, so I stay relative like this far-ish away from it. But doing that means that it gets a lot of access to those, and we were talking before
smacking
we started.
And lisping.
I don't drink enough water, so that happens to me a lot. And I'm taking creatine, which makes it worse. So you go to do a voiceover and you're completely dehydrated, and all you're hearing are these smacking, nasty, liquidy sound effects. And back in the day, before I found out about a software package that helps with that, I would just have to redo takes over and over and over again. It was a nightmare.
I have to redo a lot of it's always right, like the first 10 to 30 minutes, I think, of the voiceover session is where it's the worst, because after you've talked for like 15 minutes, they start coming a lot easier. But
you get into a flow for sure.
And that's really the worst part about it, is because when you got to sit down to do voiceover, it's not even doing it. It's like knowing the first 15 minutes of it's going to be hell.
Absolutely. It's the anxiety, even though it's not really anxiety, but just, if I have the option, it's like, well, I do need to capture some more like B-roll style footage. I'll do that.
I'll do that instead.
Whatever. Yeah. I could, respond to comments right now instead of doing a voiceover. Everything takes priority over voiceover when I'm doing it. But it also, I'm dyslexic, so I have a hard time reading at the same rate that I can talk.
Yeah.
So I have to reread things a lot. And even when I do, I'll end up saying really stupid stuff that as I'm reading it, it makes sense, because my mind, it's very easy for me to jump to conclusions. So for a very good example, is playing through Final Fantasy VII, one of the best video games ever. I think I was probably 27 years old when I found out that Cloud's Limit Break Meteor Rain was Meteor Rain and not Mediterranean. Because I read like the first few letters of it and I was like, that's it.
Mediterranean.
There we go. Yep. So like, you know, I have that issue. So reading my scripts and then speaking along with it, I can't do naturally. I think a really great content creator, Grimbeard, the way he reads his voiceovers, it sounds like he's just reading right along with the script. And sometimes he even comes to points where he misspelled something. He'll just say it because that's how, you know, good he is at doing that. He can just go with the flow like that. I can't do. I have to reread, you know, 2 sentences over and over again, and then once it's locked in my head, I can sort of follow with my eyes, but mostly I have it memorized.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It seems like you have a pretty good flow going.
Well, that comes with I do all of my audio editing as I record the voiceover. So I don't leave. I heard that other content creators don't do this, but for me, it's the only way I can get it done. I space out everything that I'm doing. Once I'm finished with my voiceover, throw it on the timeline. That is the backbone of my entire video because it's already perfectly spaced. All of my, you know, when I stop and start a sentence, I've already done that in ear as I'm editing it, putting it all together in Audacity. So I do a lot of work up front. That way, when I edit, I lay back and I can just choose from my little clip pool what fits what I'm saying best. And it makes the editing process so smooth. I could sit here and edit, and I've done it before for like, you know, 12, 14 hours just straight. And I'll be there when my wife wakes up. She comes and kisses me goodnight when she goes to sleep. And then I realize at like 7 a.m, I've been editing for longer than, you know, most people would work at a job or something like that. And it's really easy to do that, which is why I don't really consider this work, because it's so, you could just do it and you want to do it. You know, if you had a job every day that showing up was something you were like, hell yes, I get to go to work today. You know, you'd probably feel weird about saying, yeah, it's a job, you know? That's how I feel with YouTube. And I think the voiceover is where I get the closest to where a person who has to clock in every day feels.
I would agree with that. Yeah, the voiceover stuff is brutal. I used to edit as I recorded too. I think I stopped doing that because I do it in Fruity Loops. I do it in FL Studio.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. It's just because I already have like a music prod background. So, you know, I do a lot of music production and I just have access to more tools. And I'm very fluent in FL at this point. So now I've gotten to the point to what I do is I record it in like chunks, and then I just do all of that, and then I go in and just edit it in FL, and then I export it, and it's done. The MP3 or WAV or whatever I exported into at that time, it is done when I export it. But because of that, it's more of a mix mash. So I'll record a chunk and then I might edit it, or I might just record the next chunk and then edit them later. It's just anything to avoid doing it because it just sucks. I hate it.
Yeah.
I hate it. Man, yeah. I think I have yet to meet another person who does what we do who they don't have that same mentality of voiceover is the worst.
The worst by far. Everything else is so fun. Obviously, playing the games is great.
That's the best part.
Yeah, it's amazing, and I enjoy the little technical parts of it, figuring out the best settings on my scaler and the best like capture settings and stuff. I really enjoy getting in deep with that. And then, you know, coming around the corner, you're gonna have to put the mic in and fucking do it up, and it's terrible. I hate it so much, but it ends up I'm the kind of person I like getting the work out of the way first, and then I can enjoy something. So if I'm building like an arcade cabinet, I'll sit for days skinning the front end interface just so I could play it like 3 times and be able to see the, you know, marquee art for a arcade game or something, play it and be like, yeah, that was nice. I like to get everything done up front. So, you know, doing the voiceover stuff, right, that has to be done. That's the backbone of my stuff. I just do the editing while I'm there, and that way when I get into my DaVinci Resolve is what I use to edit. When I get into DaVinci, I have the backbone set, and all I'm doing is just dropping clips in, thinking of jokes on the fly, and it's pure being creative, zero effort. It's amazing.
Yeah. So you use DaVinci Resolve. Do you have the premium or do you use the basic, the free one?
I used Basic for years and years, and then I think 4 or 3 years ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, I got Premiere just to get the speed editor, which is really cool. It has that little dial you can use, and I like to do clip lengths that are like 30, 45 minutes, so that's a lifesaver. I just basically paid just for the speed editor, and I got premium for it.
I just started using DaVinci at the beginning of this year. I used it for I did a short review on Jedi Power Battles, and then I did that like 2.5 hour Far Cry video. Both of those were done in DaVinci. And the only because up until then, all of the videos I did were in After Effects.
Yeah.
Every video, with the exception of like the super long compilation videos, I did those in Premiere because After Effects can't do videos over 3 hours. I don't know if you knew that, but After Effects has a 3 hour cut. So if it gets longer than 3 hours, you can't. It just won't let you. It won't let you go.
I didn't even know you could edit in After Effects. I thought that was just for like making special effects and stuff. I didn't know.
Oh no, you can. Yeah, you can do. Ultimately, After Effects I think is one of the most powerful video editors that there is, because it can do pretty much anything. And that's why I liked After Effects so much, because if I wanted to add in some kind of effect or something, I could. It was there. And after using DaVinci Resolve, because everybody swears by DaVinci, pretty much every other content creator I know uses DaVinci. And after I've now used DaVinci. It's pretty easy to learn. I got used to it pretty quickly. I still miss After Effects. And I'm still probably going to use After Effects to edit some videos. But the reason I started using DaVinci is because the Quake video I was doing, I don't know if you know this, After Effects takes like 15 hours to export a video.
Wow. Damn.
I don't know why. I do not understand. I've looked it up. I've looked into ways to like optimize it and make it export faster. Everyone who uses After Effects knows it. A video that DaVinci would export in 5 minutes would take 5 hours for After Effects.
Damn, that's insane, dude.
I don't know why. And it's always been that way as long as I've been using it. I'll finish the video and I'll be like, okay, now I'll just let it export while I sleep. And then I'll wake up and it'll still be exporting like 5 or 8 hours later, however long I sleep. It's just insane. Yeah. And that's why I started using DaVinci. I was like, I can't do this anymore. I can't deal with 15-hour export times because anything could happen. The power could go out or something, It's just insanity. I still prefer After Effects, but if I think the video is going to end up being longer than like an hour, I'll probably just use DaVinci, just because if they don't fix those export times, I think people might just stop using Adobe altogether, man.
I started off using Sony Vegas.
Hey, me too. That was my first, like a decade ago.
Yeah, so I used to edit together footage from local hardcore shows in South Florida and put them together. I had a series called Destroy It All, and it was just like people getting into fights and moshing hard and like good bands and performances and stuff. And I started out with Windows Movie Maker, and then I heard about Sony Vegas, so I torrented that and cracked it and everything. And I use that for, if you look at my channel, right up until I released a video called Every Port of Resident Evil 3. That's the first time I used DaVinci Resolve. So, at this point, we're talking about like a majority of my videos were edited in Sony Vegas. And it sucked. That was the least stable program I've ever had run on a computer before.
Yeah, it's not great.
It was like, it was at least one crash per editing session. And with DaVinci Resolve, I might have DaVinci Resolve crash on me once a year, maybe. So like for me, that was the biggest thing. But I had to learn nonlinear video editing, because in Sony Vegas, if you make a change at the start of the video timeline, that change is going to stay for the rest of that period until you end it with a keyframe. Whereas with DaVinci Resolve, you can make changes here, there, or whatever, and it's just non-linear. So it was tough. And DaVinci's not exactly the easiest editing suite to learn anyways. It has a lot of its own versions of other video editing tricks and stuff. So it was tough, but it was like, if my sanity is going to still be a priority for me, I'm going to have to change editing programs.
Man, Sony Vegas was pretty terrible. I haven't used it in a really long time. What ended up happening was I when I was messing with Sony Vegas, I wasn't actually producing any like real content. I just wanted to edit videos for fun, like trailers and stuff. I was just having fun with it as a hobby, and I ended up having to get After Effects because back then I was in a metalcore band, and we needed like stream videos. And I was like, okay, throw something together on Sony Vegas. But like, I would look at like other bands' professional stream videos, and they would have like the wavelength form that matched up to their
the waveform,
their track. And because I could do everything else, like the background, I could make the little album art move, and like you were listening to, but the waveform I couldn't do. And I was like, what? Can Sony Vegas just not do this? And it can't. It just couldn't. So that was why I just ended up saying I'm gonna have to just get After Effects so that I can have the waveform.
Yeah.
So this was over a decade ago. So I got After Effects, and I had the waveform and everything, and then I just kept learning After Effects and getting better and better at it from there.
Yeah.
But yeah, Sony Vegas is terrible. Anyone listening, just don't even bother with Sony Vegas. Just download DaVinci. It's free.
I get it's so user friendly and it's easily approachable for someone who's starting out. But you're doing yourself a disservice because you're going to end up having to learn something at some point. You might as well do it at the start and get really good by the time your channel starts building an audience versus changing in the middle like I did. When you have at that point, probably like 60 to 80,000 subscribers that you want to please with your videos. And I had to learn DaVinci Resolve over the course of like 6 months, which it doesn't take that long to learn. But I was working on videos actively in Sony Vegas, and my pet project to learn all of the tricks that I'd normally do in Vegas was the Resident Evil 3 port video, which was really good because it was 4:3 content. So I had to do that blanking fill with the blurred mirrored stuff on the sides and shadowed edges and stuff like that. Things that I would normally do in Vegas. In Vegas, I would have to create a PNG of a shadow in Photoshop, import it in and put it behind the video layer, and then double up and stuff. With DaVinci Resolve, it's just an effect I can throw straight on the clip or on an adjustment layer. It's amazing. But yeah, you definitely want to start, if you're going to start editing, DaVinci Resolve is free. Vegas, not so much. You can torrent it like I did, but I think that probably led to a lot of my stability issues anyways. But just take the plunge early, learn a nonlinear editor and be done with it as opposed to doing what I did.
Yeah, I think that's probably good advice. Although I will say, I've had to do like weird like workaround things like you're talking about, like go in, make a PNG, and that is the kind of like creative like obstacle overcoming we were talking about earlier.
Yeah,
that is exactly what it is. So by doing that, it did give us an opportunity to like learn how to work with PNGs and get better at understanding like that kind of. I mean, there probably was a benefit to it, but I think the difference, the amount of time we probably spent learning workarounds like that probably could have canceled out if we just
it could have been applied better elsewhere for sure.
Probably should have just learned a better video editor. But another question I wanted to ask you though is, sitting here thinking about your channel, we're talking about all these videos that you've edited and going through Sony Vegas and everything. Do you think that you have a least favorite video that you've made and released? Something that you put out and you're like, yeah, I mean, it is what it is, but I'm not particularly proud of it, kind of.
I got to cheat again because I have like a category. I cannot stand. I went through a period about 2 years ago, maybe a little less, like a year and a half, 2 years ago, where if you go back and watch my videos, I have a video called "The Best Way to Play the entire Silent Hill series," and it's like a 2 hour long video. It was so fun to work on. I got to capture a bunch of footage, compare a lot of ports, play a lot of Silent Hill, and it was great. And what I didn't realize was happening at the time, and this was something I was totally unconscious of, is I was developing YouTube voice. So I was like, it's hard to explain, but every single day I would sit down to record, I was developing bad habits where I would over project my voice. And I would change the way, because right now how I'm speaking is how my normal voice sounds. But when I was making that video, it was like, all right, guys, we're going to get in and play some Silent Hill. I was trying to put a lot of, it was mostly me over projecting and not knowing how to speak into a microphone properly, which is a process I'm still learning. But if you go back and watch videos before I started working on the Suffering series, you can hear, especially in that Silent Hill video, if you load it up right now, it takes my Stalker 2 video and it's more just naturally me speaking. The Silent Hill video is like, and it's a really great game that I think everybody should play. And I'm talking like this, and I don't know why I'm using this voice right here. And I'm trying to shoot my voice into the microphone, and I'm putting things into it. And it feels like YouTube voice. It's like, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. You know what I mean? That kind of voice.
Yeah, yeah.
I went through a period where I was doing that, and I had to relearn how to do a voiceover. And now that I've sort of gotten better with that and put more of my natural voice into my videos, going back and listening to those older videos, dude, it's tough, man. And I was doing myself a disservice too, because I was making my voice sound worse, because I would say personally, especially with an SM7B, which is very pleasing on the low end, I have a deeper register to my voice for sure. And what I was doing is speaking with a lot of mids like this right here, and I was making myself sound worse than how I would normally sound if I just speak into the microphone like a normal human being who's having a conversation, not screaming at someone from across a bar about how good a video game is.
Man, it's funny you say that, because I kind of had like the opposite. I kind of like the exact opposite journey with my voiceovers, because a lot of my earlier videos, I've gone back and listened to them, I was not projecting at all. I was not putting any enthusiasm. Like, if I've gone back and listened to some of my older videos, particularly the first one on the channel. It's like a 2-hour video about Metal Gear Solid. I'm just, and this is where Solid Snake gets involved, and it's very like just I'm reading from a script, and because I was really overthinking it when I was recording those earlier voiceovers, and then I listened to some of my later videos where I just didn't care. I wasn't thinking about it at all. I just sit down and read the script and have fun. And I'm like projecting a lot. I'm like talking loudly, and I'm like, there's just a very clear difference, because naturally I do project a lot. I don't have like a smooth, sexy radio voice like you. And so if I try to force it, it just sounds like I'm bored, and not in a good way. It just sounds bad, because naturally I have like a very enthusiastic kind of voice, and the videos where I wasn't thinking about it at all, I can tell that the projection, my voice almost naturally is like a YouTuber voice. So it's funny that you're talking about like like listening to it and like learning and like leaning into where you naturally are. It's just like polar opposite direction of what I ended up doing.
Well, you know what I think the problem is you can, I definitely can. I think other content creators can. If they're watching a YouTube video, you can hear when someone's just doing their voice, when they're being very natural about how they speak, versus, there are people like that guy Pirate Software, who everybody hates right now. He doesn't sound like that. He doesn't sound like that. You know what I mean? He's literally doing a voice, and he has like software that shifts his, not just an EQ. We're talking about like pitch shifting his voice down, and it messes up sometimes, and you can hear when it does and what is natural. If you go back and watch videos from 2 years before right now, he sounds like this. Which is fine, because that's his natural speaking voice.
Yeah.
But everyone's putting ace on it. I personally think the player does too. Because nobody naturally speaks in this sort of register. Like, you know what I mean? So you can hear when someone's not being like real, and they're not putting forward how they naturally sound. And you can tell when they're boosting things sort of unnaturally. So whatever your natural, that was my journey, was finding my voice just sits right here.
Yeah.
And I can project more if and you can change it as the script needs it. There might be a point where you have to show more enthusiasm or less, or you're being serious about a subject, and your voice will naturally lower. But I think that the real struggle is just to find how your voice sounds and how it can sound better on a microphone, but staying within that core center of this is what your voice is, because anything else than that, I think it becomes pretty obvious to a lot of people, maybe not everybody. But you're going to have people in your audience going like, I wish he would just speak like a normal human being.
Yeah.
And I'm sure people were probably hearing that with me. Or either that, or they're going to think like I'm Pirate Software and I'm all doing that as well. But yeah, that's the struggle, is to find your voice, no matter what it is. It might be higher, because there are YouTubers who have, again, I'm mentioning Grimbeard. His voice is very mid to high. That's where it sits naturally, and it sounds awesome. It's his voice, and you can hear it. And he uses less EQ and mastering stuff than I do. You could just hear his voice, and it's really pleasing to listen to.
Right.
Whereas if you're going to listen to a 2-hour video of a guy who's doing a voice, it's sort of fatiguing on the ear, and it gets annoying.
Yeah. It almost feels insincere to a degree. It's
Yeah, for sure.
It's interesting that you say like find your natural voice, because I had to do this with like recording my voiceovers, but it's honestly something I have to do all of the time for so many things in my life, where I just have to say, dude, fuck it, I don't care, whatever. I have to do that all the time. And when it came to voiceovers, because I have like a really high pitched voice. It's almost like whiny to a degree. And I've thought about it before, and I'm like, man, I've even had comments like on my videos thinking that I'm like 20. I'm almost 30. I'm 29. I'm almost 30.
Yeah.
Like I'm a grown ass 200-pound man, but people listen to my videos because I was talking about Quake or something, and they're like, I can tell from your voice that like you weren't alive in the early 2000s. Like, dude, I definitely was.
Yeah.
But you just have to forget about it. Some people, it doesn't matter what your voice sounds like. Some people are going to click on it and they're going to be like, nah, I'm out. And you can't prevent that. And if you try extra hard to prevent it, you're just going to have a worse time, and people are going to be able to tell. So you really just have to say, fuck it, I don't care, whatever.
Yeah, you just got to do you. And when people hear that, even subconsciously, this is my theory, I think people will gravitate towards things that feel authentic to them. And not everybody is going to be able, because there are so many content creators who are very inauthentic, very fake. They're putting on and it seems obvious to most people, which is why, they tend to be the more controversial content creators. But I think if you're trying to grow a YouTube channel or start a YouTube channel, it's in your best interest to sort of get to know yourself and where you are naturally. You can tell when a streamer is overhyping a situation to get clicks or to farm engagement. They want a clip on Twitter of them freaking out and screaming and yelling at the video game. And you can feel and see that. And it feels like you said, it's just disingenuous. It's like you're actively being lied to by hearing this person open their mouth. And that's not a fun experience. And I think most people, once they reach a certain level of like inner maturity, can see that outwardly in people. And it definitely does make having a YouTube channel more of an uphill battle than it needs to be. So I think it's in everybody's best interest to do a little soul searching and just to physically and mentally find who they are, and then put that forward into YouTube. Because, this whole thing started as people just broadcasting themselves. And
classic moniker, broadcast yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And that was the big draw for me. You got to see artists make their own music without a label, or you got to see video game reviewers like Angry Video Game Nerd. Before him, there wasn't an angry video game review trend because that was his thing. He brought it out, and it was so like interesting and new and fresh and cool, and something you couldn't see on TV. People talk about sticking their head in, buffalo diarrhea instead of playing a game.
What a classic.
Yeah. So like you need to be that version of whatever that is to you. That's what you need to put out there is your thing that you have to offer YouTube, because there's a million reviewers. There's no reason to watch one of my videos if you're just looking for a review. But people want to see you, and they want to know your personal, how something affected you, or they want to hear in your voice that this is a person who's giving me their genuine and honest opinion. So a lot of times in videos, I don't have to say, by the way, I'm being for real when I say this, because you can hear in my voice, this is something that genuinely affected me in X, Y, or Z way.
Yeah.
And I think the closer you get to that, the closer you get to forming a really sort of tight relationship with the people who watch your videos.
Yeah, I think that's well said. That's very well said. Shifting the conversation a little bit, obviously, you're a full-time YouTuber. You make a lot of video game reviews and content, but is there any type of content that's not like videos or reviews that you really want to start pursuing, or maybe you have started pursuing that's different,
Yes, for sure.
What would that be?
So since me and my wife, we've been living in Tokyo now for somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 years, 2.5, 3 years, somewhere in that neighborhood. And what originally got me wanting to move here was J vloggers, people who lived here and vlogged their everyday experience.
Yeah, that
And
PewDiePie grind.
yeah, like I wanted to see, because it's I don't necessarily watch vlogs ever, because I don't care about most people's everyday life, but there are people who lived here, and I wanted to see what things could be like for me, getting up, going to the combini and grabbing a coffee, whatever. Very small little things that to me were very valuable, and I want to work on something like that because, we have an
J-vlog.
interesting life here, and I mean, when I was going to language school for the first year or so that we were living here, I was skating to Shinjuku every day. And that's like cool. That's a fucking dope thing that I would love to show people. And it was a really fun route that I would take. And you would have to skate through sidewalks in Shinokubo. There are so many like domestic tourists that love, because it's Koreatown. Everybody wants to go there to get Korean fried chicken and stuff. And you should. It's amazing. But the sidewalks are packed. So you had to get really good at weaving in and out of people. And I feel like a video about that would be like the sickest thing ever.
That sounds fun. I would watch that.
For sure. Yeah, I would watch the hell out of that myself. So me and my wife are trying to like pivot towards that. We're slowly, the same way I did with my channel, we're building up to the point where we can do it. I want to buy a nice camera that has a good wide angle lens on it and stuff, just so we can show people what we see, and just kind of, I like the idea of people getting to see what I do on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, that's.
I really want to work on a room tour video, actually, that's my like next creative project I really want to get going.
That I mean, I'll subscribe to it. I've talked about doing stuff like that with my girlfriend as well. We want to shoot like vlog style videos, just for fun, even if nobody really cares. But what would you call it? Jared's Japanese Adventures.
So we already have a YouTube channel for it called Tokyo Crows.
That's so good. That's great. That's a great name.
It's a really cool name. We have some like art drawn up. Yeah, Tokyo Crows sounds like it's been, like, I watched this manga Crows. I used to read Crows, and I watched the movies, and there was this really cool idea in there that, because in Tokyo, crows are kind of like pigeons in New York. They're sort of a nuisance. But at the same time, like a lot of like rebellious youth culture here sort of look to crows in this crow series as like, okay, maybe they're rats with wings, maybe they're pieces of shit, but they could still fly. And that was a cool idea to me. Like, you could still be a fucking asshole, piece of shit, whatever, and you got something about you that makes you good and worth like people, looking at or something. So, that was a cool idea. So we're like, yeah, fuck it, Tokyo Crows, that's it.
Wow. Yeah, that's a great name, man. That's a really great name.
Yeah, I like it. It's cool.
Is the channel up already, or?
Yeah, the channel is up. We don't have anything on it at the moment, but we have a friend who does art and stuff, and in the background we're working on little stuff like getting a little channel banner and maybe some wireless mics from Rode or something. DJI.
I have a DJI
action cam.
Yeah.
So like stuff like that, we're trying to start like build up enough stuff that we can sort of work on a few videos in the background while I'm doing this stuff, and then have something to release on a consistent schedule of some kind.
Yeah, man, you need to link me the channel so I can go ahead and subscribe before anything goes up, so I can be ready for it.
Oh yeah, dude.
All right, man. Yeah, that's cool. Are there any big, back to YouTube, are there any big dream projects or videos that you thought about taking on pretty soon?
I think right now my fan translation project is what I'm super stoked on.
I know you've been working on that one for a while.
Very time. Well, it started as I was just gonna do it as it goes. So like get an hour and a half of like content, a collection of fan translations, and then throw them up as I finish them. But then I started getting really into playing the fan translations, and it got in the way of working on the video. So what I've been doing now is just capturing fan translations, writing 2 or so pages of a script for it. And I have like 63, 64 pages of fan translations, which probably is going to end up, that's like 4 or 5 hours of stuff.
You're going to split it up into a series?
Yeah. Well, because like it would take forever. It'd take me another year to finish a 63-page script. So, just, as I'm working on other projects, when I get done editing what I'm working on right now, which is a Stalker console port video, I will probably record 1 or 2 pages every so often when I get a chance to. And that'll give me something to work on in the background. And when I run into a situation like I was recently where it took me 140, 150 hours to finish Stalker 2, let alone write a script, voice, that was a 32-page script. That took me forever to voice, and then editing the video, it was like a month and a half before I released any content. So to be able to have something on the side to be able to release so that people know that I'm still alive, would be very cool.
Yeah, I've thought a lot about doing something like that too for that very same reason. I'm excited about this fan translation project. I know you've been working on it for a long time, and I don't know. I'm hyped. I want to see. Because that's not something I would ever work on. So it's going to be cool to see that, man. Well, I had
to get out of my comfort zone with a lot of stuff. Playing games I would never ever play.
Yeah, I think that's big. I think that playing games that kind of pull you out of what you're used to, I think that's pretty huge because people can tell, and I think it's genuine and they appreciate that. It's like, hey, this isn't something I would normally get into, but here's what my experience was. And that I try to do that a lot on my channel too. I try to play a little bit of stuff that I'm really familiar with and I'm like coming at it from, look, I know a lot about this. And then I try to play something that's like, I know nothing about this and this is what that was like.
Yeah. I mean, you do the full series retrospectives as well, which is a great way to get that done because I did Fatal Frame, and I love Fatal Frames 1, 2, and 3. 4 on the Wii and 5 on the PS5 is like I would never play those games otherwise because I hate the Wii. Yeah. So if it wasn't for that, and I ended up falling in love with Fatal Frame 4 on the Wii. Like that was a fan translation as well. I should include that. I didn't even think about it.
Oh yeah.
But yeah. So like that was a game that I had a lot of fun with, and I would not have played otherwise. So doing the full series retrospective is the best way to get that done for sure.
Yeah, that's the case that's how I found it to be. And at some point, I probably want to do stuff that's not just retrospective content, but I just love doing it so much. It's just so fun. Sure. I mean, I have like a mountain of games. I'm like, man, I want to talk about all those, and I can't. Not yet. I gotta work my way to it. So I thought it'd be cool to get to know you a little bit more personally, outside of being a video game content creator. So, not for work, not for content. What are some games you've been playing recently, just for fun?
On the Xbox 360, there's a strategy RPG called Operation Darkness. It's like a JRPG, like turn-based.
Never heard of that.
Dude, it's really cool. So it's World War II, but with vampires and werewolves. Incredible. And so
that sounds awesome.
Dude, there's like a secret unit in the British Special Forces that are people who are like lycanthropes, essentially.
I love that.
And on the Nazi forces, there is a vampire who's risen to like major general and controls a bunch of stuff. And you're in the middle of it's a strategy RPG where you're using like an M1 Garand to attack and stuff. It's really cool stuff. It's very interesting. It's heavily slept on.
I've never even heard of that, but it sounds fantastic. It was called Operation Darkness.
Really cool. Yeah.
That's a great name. It's an album name. Okay, well, what are some games that you consider like super important to you personally? I mean, obviously, like Silent Hill 3 and Resident Evil, but like, what's something that people might not know about?
So one of my more you wouldn't expect given my content is the Mega Man X games.
Really? You're right. I wouldn't expect that.
Yeah, X4 and Mega Man 8 as well. I love a good Mega Man game. Like they're so good. I love 1, 2, and 3 on the NES, but I think X, X4, and 8 are like the three. I could play those games over and over and over again. And me and my wife try to at least once a week just sit down and play a video game together, even if it's just like one of us is playing. So recently we played through X4 and we played through 8. And I was just like, damn, I forgot how much I love, because it had been 2 years since I played it. But that's one of those series that I don't think people would imagine that I super get into heavy. But yeah, Mega Man X1, X4, and Mega Man 8 are like the most fun I can have with the controller in my hand.
Wow, I didn't even know you liked Mega Man. That's pretty interesting.
And because it's not one of those series that there are series that you get into that like you put forward into the world. Resident Evil for me, Final Fantasy and stuff like that. But then there are series that you play that are just, this is my comfort zone, This is a warm blanket over me. For a lot of times, that's like JRPGs for me. I love Japanese role-playing games to a stupid degree, and I put dumb amounts of time into them, even though I very rarely cover them on my channel because for a lot of them, they're just stuff for me,
Yeah. Do you think you would ever do a video on Mega Man?
I don't know how I could. I do have a few sections in my fan translation video for the PS1 remakes of all the original NES titles, but there are a lot of videos that, like for example, Devil May Cry is a series I would love to dive into on the channel, but it's not the kind of series that hits me in that sort of emotional way that I feel the need to, like, I need to talk about this, even though I love, and same thing with Metal Gear Solid. Incredible series. Metal Gear Solid 1, 3, 2 is, I might like 2 more than 3 now that I think about it.
Your favorite son shares that sentiment. He likes 2 more than 3 as well.
It depends on the day you ask me. They're like this for me. But yeah, I love Metal Gear Solid to death. But I don't know if I could do a video on the Metal Gear Solid series because with a lot of the games that I cover on my channel, I have something inside of me that I want to get out about that series. With Metal Gear Solid, despite having like an emotional connection, and me and my wife, when we were living with my parents, she ended up having to move in with me really early into our relationship because her parents moved like state, and we had to decide after dating for like a year whether or not we were going to stay together for the rest of our lives. So they moved to like North Carolina, and my mom was like, I mean, she can move in here with us. That's how young we were. But one of our big things was when we both got off of work, we'd play through the entire, and we did all Metal Gear Solid 1 through 4, we played through together, which was really fun. So I have an emotional connection to it, but I don't have anything inside of me that I want to get out about Metal Gear Solid or Devil May Cry. Despite enjoying them and, having no problems with them, they're great games that I spend time with personally. But, with YouTube, when I work on a project, it's something that I can't not work on. You know what I mean? Like for Stalker, I couldn't continue making YouTube videos if I didn't talk about, I have stuff in me that I want to get out and say about Stalker. And I don't know that I have that with, some of my other interests like Mega Man, Castlevania Symphony of the Night, games that are amazing that I replay probably once a year. I don't have anything inside of me to get out about them. You know what I mean?
I think I do know what you mean. An example, I've had a couple of people ask me to do videos on Half-Life, on the Half-Life games. And I love Half-Life. Like Half-Life 1... Like Half-Life 1, 2, and the episodes are some of my favorite games of all time. I've probably played through 2 and the episodes like 10 times. I have the Xbox 360 achievement for carrying the gnome in episode 2 from the beginning of the game all the way to the rocket at the end of the game. I don't know if you know about that. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But there's an achievement in Half-Life 2 episode 2 called Little Rocket Man, because there's a little gnome that you can pick up at like the start of the game, and you have to just carry it with you. You have to like stuff it like with the physics engine. You have to like stuff it in the buggy and like drive it. I have that achievement, so I love the games. But every time somebody asks me if I'm ever going to do it, I think to myself like maybe, but I really don't have anything to say.
Exactly.
I just don't. I don't have anything. They're awesome. They're great. Play them. There's not that there's nothing to say about them. There's angles. It's just me. I don't have anything to say about Half-Life.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you have to have like a draw. It's making you like, you can't, there are no projects that I start where it's just like, yeah, it'd be nice to work on this. It's like, no, I get the idea in my head and I have to work on it, Yeah. And for a lot of series, despite me loving them almost to the same degree as other series I've covered on the channel, I don't have that, the inner drive.
And sometimes I'll do a video because out of nowhere that I wasn't planning to, because I have that. That's what happened with the Far Cry Instincts video. I wasn't planning to do that. I didn't want to. I had planned to finish Killzone and start Quake, because I knew I wanted to do those. And then in November, I just started listening to the Far Cry Instinct soundtrack, and I'd be like, dude, I have so much to say about this game. And then I just started playing it, and then I started working on the script. That was not planned. That video just kind of forced itself on me. And I'm really glad that it's out of the way, because it was kind of a pain in the ass to make. But it does matter. It does, because sometimes, even if you really love a game, like looking at Half-Life, I love that game, and I don't have anything to say about it. That's it. I can't do a video on it. I'm not the guy for that.
Yeah. I've been forced into not forced necessarily. That's bad wording. I've been in a situation where I've worked on a video where I didn't have that pull to really talk about. I had a Patreon supporter who was an incredibly nice guy, but ended up forming a super hard, like, what do they call that? Your parasocial relationship with me. And I won't say his name or anything, because a lot of this stuff is very personal, but he had messaged me on Patreon. He's like, dude, I'm thinking about taking my own life. Damn. It's like, holy fuck, here's my number. Call me right fucking now, right? Yeah. And I got on the phone with him, and then it was like every single weekend he would call me every night, and I'd be like, dude, you can't do that, man. You know, I mean, like
I appreciate you, and I want to be there for you, but you can't, I understand.
So through that, and I tend to be a big pushover too. It's hard for me to say no to people. I'm like this big burly guy, but in reality, I avoid conflict so much it's ridiculous, and which is not what you would expect to hear from an ex-bouncer for 6 or 7 years or something like that. But like I if it's not physical confrontation, I avoid it at all costs, because I hate awkward situations. But he was like, I love Christ, I'm blanking on the series now. Soul. Oh no, what is it? With Raziel, the vampire.
Legacy of Kain?
Legacy of Kain.
Soul Reaver, yeah.
Soul Reaver. So he's like, Soul Reaver's the best game. And I was like, yeah, I can remember playing the Dreamcast port of that game. That's super interesting. He's like, dude, you should talk about it. And he eventually talked me into it. And I made a video. I never even made it public. But I played through the game, and I just couldn't. I made the video, but I didn't have anything to say. And even when he watched it, he was like, yeah, I kind of felt like you didn't really care to play the game. And I was like, yeah, that was sort of the case. And ever since then, I just sort of have like a phobia of feeling that again. So I just want to work on projects that are jumping out of me, as opposed to ones that I have to work on.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think it's also pretty important, because you don't want to end up with a video where it's like, I'm not super satisfied with that.
Well, there's a lot of YouTubers who end up burning themselves out because they do work that they have to do versus work that they want to do. And for me personally, starting this, because it started as a hobby, obviously, but even as a hobby, I kind of made a rule for myself. This is because I want to do it. So I'm never going to do any work on this channel that isn't something that I desperately want to do. And I've tried to remain relatively true to that. And I think people, when they watch your content, can tell this is a video this guy wanted to make versus I have to get a video out. It's my release schedule is approaching, so I'll just go ahead and fart out some video, some shit I don't care about. And I think people can tell, and you do that long enough, it's a soulless thing, and it takes its toll on you, which is why you see YouTubers just drop out fairly often. A lot of people who got popular off of making videos that they grew to not enjoy, you see those people truly, like, you could see their personality take a hit, and it kind of drains you.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't even been doing it that long, and I have felt that before sometimes, where I'm like, damn, I'm starting to feel a little bit burnt out. But I'm fortunate to be in a really specific place where there's so many games that I want to do videos on that is part of what is forcing me to get the videos out so fast. Like I release a lot of videos, and I release them pretty quickly. And
you definitely do. It's wild.
It's part of that is because I need to make some money. I need to pay my bills. I don't have a lot of money, but that's really not the main incentive. The main factor. The main factor is I know I can't talk about this game until I've done with these, right? So I was cranking out the Killzone videos, which I loved making those. Those were great. But in the back of my head, I was like, man, I'm so ready to talk about Quake. And now I get to talk about Quake, and I'm really having a good time making the scripts for that. But even doing that, I'm like, I'm at some point I want to do Infamous. I want to do the Infamous games. I want to do the Resistance games. I have all these games I want to talk about. I'm like, man, sooner I get through with these, the sooner I can get to those. So that's part of
Yeah.
what it just kind of rolls itself into itself. But yeah, you have to really like doing it. Somebody asked me about it. I was like, dude, it's a lot more work than you might think. You have to actually really like doing it, or you'll burn yourself out really fast.
Well, you know what I've found personally, this is my little anecdote, is I think a lot of people want to be YouTubers, but they don't necessarily have a drive or a creative need to express themselves. They just want the end result of having X amount of subscribers or putting out a video that gets X amount of views. And it's like, man, that doesn't do it for you at the end of the day. You know what I mean? Like, if you're not expressing yourself creatively on here, like I said, the people who aren't doing that, who are being disingenuous, it catches up to you in the end. It gets everybody. And at the end of the day, if I end up having to not do YouTube anymore for any reason, which for the foreseeable future, not going to happen for me. But, real life at some point may get in the way. I may end up having to get a full-time job here in Japan at some point to keep my visa. And if I have to stop doing YouTube, I'm really happy that I can look back at it and say, every single video I put out, I wanted to make. There was none that I felt like I had to. There were none where, the fan base would like this, so I definitely have to work on this. Money is there. It pays my bills. I'm appreciative of it. I'm not cavalier about the idea that I make a full income off of YouTube, but money has never been why I work on anything, and that's super important to me. And I think at the end of the day, what really helps me is knowing that when this all stops, I can say hell yeah, no matter what the income was from before I made money on YouTube to right now, where I pay my bills, I pay my rent, and I live in the most beautiful city on earth, nothing changed between that day and this day. Every video that I worked on was something that I had to work on, that I needed to get out of me, and I wanted to express myself creatively. And the money, it was great to have it, but at no point did it affect the creative end of the process.
I can appreciate that. I think that's a powerful thing. I think it's very powerful that you can say that with such sincerity, that it was always that was never the driving factor for you. I think that's really cool. Yeah. And what you said earlier about a lot of people just want the end result of it. I don't want to get too philosophical here, but this is something that is very interesting to me. Is I don't believe in bad emotions. I believe in misused or misallocated emotions, but I don't believe in bad emotions. And that drive, that idea of a lot of people who just want to have that end result, a lot of people might look at that negatively. I'm not saying that's me. That's really not me. If that's what I wanted, I wouldn't be making video game retrospectives. I did that because that's a whole other thing. But what I'm saying is a lot of people want attention. And a lot of people, and when you say that, it almost sounds bad. It almost sounds like it has a negative connotation. It's like, oh, you just want attention. But that isn't necessarily a bad thing.
No. I mean, we all do. That's
everybody.
Why we get married or get girlfriends and boyfriends. It's a natural part of the human existence.
Everybody wants attention. And I think it's really important to just acknowledge that and say, that's not bad. You're not a bad person because you want attention, but you do need to figure out how to kind of earn it a little bit. I forget who it was. I mean, you might know who I'm talking about. Someone in the comments probably will, but there was a comedian once who said, I knew I needed to be a comedian because I wanted people's attention, and I had to justify it by saying, hey, I'm funny. And I think that could be good for most people to just accept that and embrace it if that's you. And if that is you and you want that end result and you want that attention, just do the work in a sincere way. Don't get involved in doing something just for the attention. Just say, hey, I want this. Let me earn it. Let me earn it justifiably.
Interestingly, I don't know if you're old enough to remember MTV2 when it came out and it was just music videos because MTV was having too many TV shows. But back in the day, they would have these just filler not commercials, but they would have commercial slots in MTV2. and they had this interview with a guy who was in a band, and I'll never remember who this guy was, but he said the most profoundly cool thing I've ever heard in my life. And this was like late 90s, maybe 96, 97. And this guy said, you know, what's interesting about music is when you put music out there, it's such an expression of yourself that when people enjoy it and accept it, it feels as if they're enjoying and accepting you. And I think that's the attention people want. You know, when we make videos and we see in our comment section that people have had a really positive reaction to this, and it's a work that's very personal to us, they're having a positive reaction to us because it has so much of us in it. And it's like everybody, you know, if someone walked up to you out on the street and said, yo, that's a sick shirt, I love that band too, you feel a sense of like, yeah, we both like this band, but like this guy's kind of giving me praise for having this band shirt, and that feels really good. There is a portion of that in putting out YouTube videos that do well, or they get a certain amount of views, or they get a positive reaction from your audience.
Yeah, you know, that does bring up an interesting point, because when someone says, hey, cool, you know, cool shirt, what they're really saying is, it's cool that you also like this band that's cool.
Yeah.
You're
exactly.
cool because that band is cool and you know it. And there's a lot of that in video game YouTubers, because when somebody, that's why it really is so important to be sincere and genuine with the games that you cover. Because when someone gets involved in your channel and they're like, wow, the games that you like are cool, because I also like those games. You know, that's something I've always thought in the back of my head, that the vast majority of the games that I cover have a sci-fi tint, because I really like sci-fi stuff. Most of the stuff, I don't do a lot of fantasy stuff. I like some of it, but I don't really like fantasy settings that much.
Right.
There's a few exceptions, but the vast majority of my content is going to be sci-fi in some regard. Even my Dragon Ball content. I mean, they go to space, they have spaceships. It is sci-fi. Because when someone sees your channel and they go, hey, cool video, it's because they also like that thing, and they think that you're cool because you like that thing. So if you just make videos on whatever games, whether or not you like them, you're going to do yourself a disservice, because you're going to confuse people.
Yeah.
It's like wearing it's like wearing a t-shirt for a band you don't actually like.
Yeah, exactly. And you get to that point where you have to name your favorite album, and you can't.
Yeah, and you can't.
Nobody wants to be in that situation. It's terrible. I have found what the coolest thing about YouTube for me is finding out how many of my personal experiences have been shared by people who didn't grow up near me, were in totally different situations than me. You know, a single parent household, somebody who didn't have any siblings, had the same experience with Resident Evil 2 as I did. And all of my stuff was the opposite of that. And in your comment section, you're getting people there going like, yeah, no, I remember when that came out, I had to install Steam. That's the first time I heard of Steam. And it's this universal experience we've all had. So you get to share this really cool thing about yourself, and people go, yeah, me too. And you're like, now us, we're in this. And it's a really cool feeling. It's honestly better than the entire like attention-based aspect of it, is being able to talk to people who, despite being totally different from you, had the same exact experience with a video game.
Yeah, you're right, man. I couldn't say it better myself. I have nothing to add. That was great. Moving on to another question. We're going to take it away from video games for just a second. Can you tell me about some non-video game related media that inspires you?
Music for sure.
Yeah, I'm big on music too.
Yeah, like I was in a nationally touring band called King Conquer way back in the day. I've always loved aggressive or interesting music, so I have a pretty wide taste. And throughout the day, ambient trance, video game OSTs, upbeat J-pop, Korean pop Korean R&B is amazing. Grindcore, math metal.
Hell yeah.
Like I get into a very wide I don't listen to a lot of country, but Charlie Daniels Band is incredible.
I've seen them live.
90s Garth Brooks is incredible. I get into Neil Young, even though his voice is terrible. There's something about that man. I love his voice, even though it's the worst thing ever. Yeah, I find that I tend to use music to put me into a mood where I can create something myself.
Yeah.
You know, Like I listen to when I'm writing up my scripts. It depends on what I'm writing and what I'm feeling at the moment. But I might listen to a survival horror playlist of, Tormented Souls and Resident Evil and Silent Hill music, or I might listen to the algorithm if I'm writing something that has more energy to it. Or
Great,
something,
by the way.
you know?
Algorithm is great. I love them. I think it's one guy actually, because he's on Cell
It
Dwellers
is.
label
Yeah, it's a
Fixed.
French
It's
guy.
just one guy. Yeah,
He
yeah.
has a
Algorithm
drummer when
rocks.
They do music videos, but it's just him. Yeah, incredible. Some of the best music on planet Earth right now is the algorithm.
Yeah, yeah. Algorithm. Is like, if you're listening to this right now and you want some like fantastic like electronic metal, Algorithm. You ever listen to a band called Igor?
I was literally just gonna say Igor.
Yeah.
Oh my god, they're so good.
He's I think he's French, but I've been
Yeah, he
listening
is.
to. Jeez, I listened to him most of the day yesterday, but I've been listening to Igor for like 5 years because when I
Yeah.
first found him, I was like, oh, this is something I didn't know I needed that I can't find anywhere else.
Yeah, when Savage Sinoid came out, I was in
Sinusoid.
college. Sinusoid, that's it. Yeah. And that song, it's Ieud or something like that. That song was like my college theme song. I would listen to it going in. It would like get me ready for the day of going to classes and stuff. Like Igor is incredible, absolutely amazing.
That's the album. I'm pretty sure where the first song is just him screaming for like 12 seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the best
Listen to
songs
that
ever. I
My
listen to
wife,
that
that's
all
her
the
favorite
time.
song.
It's so good, man.
It's dope as hell. They're amazing.
What else have you been listening to recently?
Right now, I've been in an interesting spot. I'm trying to discover like new bands. There's this hardcore band called Grove Street, which is really good.
It's a great hardcore band name. That sounds like a hardcore band name.
Yeah. And they're cool. They play like pretty like California style old school hardcore, which is nice.
Yeah.
I've been listening to the like I got back into the algorithm because I didn't listen to their latest album until like 2 weeks ago or something like that.
Really
So
good.
it's got me back because I started lifting heavy again 2 weeks ago, and I was like, okay, algorithm is for sure the way.
Hell yeah.
So I've been listening to a lot of algorithm. I've been listening to a lot of Japanese hip hop lately. There's this girl called Nene, and she has a song with Aoyama Thelma. It's really good. It's called Otskare, and it is ratchet as fuck, dude. It's so fucking sick. I'll send it to you when we're done. It's the dopest.
Why don't you just name me a couple artists off your gym playlist right now? Like what are you jamming when you're lifted heavy?
Fast music and fast or heavy. There's this really, really good I hate how I have to always preface this non-racist skinhead band called Conservative Military Image. Very good. Like hit the gym, improve your life, get a job. We're different from everybody else, but it doesn't mean we have to be these waste pieces of shit. So Conservative Military Image is hyping me up hard.
Hell yeah.
There's a Japanese sort of like skate thrash punk rock sound, Razor's Edge, solid, really fast music. And their snare is essentially tuned to that Metallica Saint Anger snare sound, very high pitched.
That Impending Doom EP.
Yeah. Dude, it's good stuff. That's what I like about gore metal is that high pitched snare. It's good shit.
Somebody grabbed a big like kitchen pot, flipped it over. Ping!
That's what I want. If you're gonna play like slamming death metal, I need that snare drum tuned real high.
Yeah, blast beat that for a while.
That's another too. Impending Doom, I got back into that first album with Silence the Oppressors on it.
God, what was
really
it?
recently.
Nail Dead Risen?
Nail Dead Risen, yeah,
Nail
because
Dead
it has
Risen.
that song Nail Dead Risen on it. Yeah.
Yeah.
When they first came out, because I was playing death metal at the time and I was a lead singer, I was very much not accepting of the cupped mic inhale vocals movement.
Hell yeah.
Dude, that was me because I was a George Fisher guy. Grab the end of the mic and scream as loud and hard as you can. That was me. And I did not like a lot of the Suicide Silence style, cup the mic, fake a voice almost.
Yeah. A lot of people think it's cheating.
It felt that way to me. Nowadays, I've come into a deathcore like rebirth where a lot of those bands were playing heavy shit, and I just needed to get over my prejudice against cup mics and inhale vocals.
Yeah.
Because Impending Doom was heavy as
Hell
all
yeah,
hell.
they
dude.
were.
They were so heavy, and the vocals I mean, you can't say they don't sound good if you like death metal vocals. He was just cheating to get there.
Yeah, he doesn't
But,
do that anymore, but
he started, yeah. And his
he
voice
does it
sounded
right now.
incredible.
But it's almost funny that he ever did like inhale like cup mic pig squeals, because like he sounds better now just doing it the
He
right
has
way.
amazing talent for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you
I
do
feel the same way.
Can you do inhale pig squeals?
No, never learned them. I was such like a fucking asshole about it that I refused to even learn the skill. And nowadays, I wish I could.
I can.
Dude.
I used to do when I played metalcore. I played in a metalcore band. Sometimes for a couple of the songs where I would do like low growls, I would swap it and just do like inhale pig squeals instead. It's like that doesn't sound right. That doesn't sound good at all. I haven't done it in so long. I guess I can't do it anymore. Fuck.
No,
I don't think I can do it anymore.
Into the avenue.
Yeah,
Sure.
I'm cutting this in because after embarrassing myself not being able to do a pig squeal there, I had to actually prove that I could do it here. See, I can do it. I haven't done it in years, man. I used to be able to do it though, for real.
I have not done vocals in a band. I was in a grindcore project called Gas Mask, which was probably
Yeah. You've told me about Gas Mask before.
that might have been like 9 years ago. That was the last time I genuinely did vocals. I probably could not scream right now without like 35-40 minutes of warm up, and even then I wouldn't even be able to get close to where I was before. I would like to start a band here. I've made a few friends who play instruments, and I want to get like an Insect Warfare style grind band going here really bad.
What's it going to take for me to get you on a track?
I would have to so I went through a period when I was in King Conquer, I did death metal vocals, and then when I started Gas Mask up, I had forgotten how to do vocals because it had been so long.
Well, apparently it's really easy. I didn't realize that I can't inhale pig squeal anymore because I can't, I guess.
Dude,
I guess you just forget it.
It's a muscle, you have to flex it, dude. It's like skateboarding. When I don't skateboard for like 4 or 5 months, I have to relearn how to do everything again.
Jeez. Use it or lose it, I guess.
It really is. But I would have to like actually be able to practice. And my neighborhood is so picturesque. It's so quiet and nice. I would feel terrible doing it in my house.
No. Yeah.
Dude, I can't even skate in this neighborhood. It's so quiet. When a car drives by, I'm just like, Jesus Christ, the noise of this guy. You know, like it's so quiet and
nice.
nice
Sound
here.
paneling.
Yeah. So like I have a pantry upstairs that I've thought about, like if I was going to practice vocals, I would need to go in there and do it. And there's good like acoustics in that room anyways. But yeah, I would need to practice and figure out how to do vocals again for me to do it for anyone.
Yeah, fair enough, man. I know you featured on you sent me a song a few months ago that you featured vocals on a while ago.
Oh yeah, Pieced Up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good few years ago. That was after I had relearned how to do vocals, and it's a totally different sound than I used to have. It's very wild. Jeez. But yeah, that's the last time that was some motherfuckery that I had to like on the way to the studio to do that. I had to spend the entire time screaming, and by the time I got to the studio and I was warmed up, my throat was dead basically. It was terrible, but it was like the studio was in like it was like 2.5 hours away from me, and I didn't want to make that drive again. It's like, hey, fuck it, let's do it, man. And
you just gotta go for it.
Just gotta go for it, and I went for it, yeah. But that ended up sounding okay on that track. It was good.
No, I thought you sounded fine, man. Sounded like you had pretty decent technique. Sounded like you knew what you were doing.
That's what I'm really good at, is tricking people into thinking that about me.
Yeah, man. I would love to hear you get some vocals going on something. That sounds like it'd be cool. Some Jared Avalanche deathcore. I guess, would you do deathcore? What would you do? You'd probably do hardcore. You like hardcore more, huh?
I tend to, if I was gonna do vocals, I'd probably move closer to like a beatdown band or like grind. You know, one of the two extreme ends of the spectrum. More highs with the grind and more lows with the beatdown style stuff. I think because I listen to mostly traditional death metal, you know, like Deicide or Obituaries.
Yeah, classic.
Their lead singer is one of the greatest vocalists on planet Earth. Period. The end. he sounds better live than he ever has been recorded before. Because he's like Alex Terrible. That guy sounds better in person than he's ever been recorded before. His voice is so powerful that these mics don't do it justice. It's insane.
Yeah,
and that's how the lead singer of Obituary is. But I get into a lot of traditional death metal. But if I was going to play in a band, it would have to be something that like excited me. And I think at the moment it's like nasty beatdown or like stupid fast grind.
I think either one of those, hearing you do vocals on it, would be really funny. Yeah, that's always like a thing, especially with modern music. I haven't really been able to find anyone who is willing to compromise in any way, shape, or form on the type of music they want to play. I guess it's because there's so much now. I'm good friends with a guitar player who he and I were in a band together for a while. And ever since then, I've always like tried to like get him to like do music with me, and we'll come. This has happened like 5 times. We'll come together, we'll demo out some stuff, and he'll be like, "Nah, I want to go like heavier beat down," and I'm like, all right, man. But like it's not really. I don't have the voice for like beat down. So I mean, even when I scream, I can do like metalcore, like deathcore screams and stuff. But like I can't. I don't have an intimidating enough voice to do beat down.
Yeah.
Are you serious? So the music will start getting more beat down. I'm like, dude, I'm gonna sound like a fool. I can't. You so we've never really been able to come together and work on it. We put one track out called Quake, but it was more like deathcore. It wasn't beat down, but he'll start migrating into like hardcore beat down. I'm like, I can't do this. It's not that I don't want to. It will sound stupid, dude. You know?
Yeah, that's how I was when I was in my in my death metal band. I could not do highs to save my life. I could only do higher sounding mids, and my bandmates would always be like, "Dude, just throw some highs in that fast part." And I was like, "You don't get it. I am not able to do that."
It's like, what highs? Where are they? Who do you think I am?
I only learned them when I relearned how to do vocals, because I taught myself, and there's huge air quotes in there, because taught myself means I found out about 6 feet under and I tried to do that. I tried to be Chris Barnes for like most of my life. And I could only do lows. I could never do his weird screechy highs. And when my band King Conquer needed a vocalist, I was like, all right, I'll come in and I'll do it. But you got to understand, I'm here. This is, I can't do this. I'm here right here. And I didn't have a lot of creative input outside of lyrics in the band, which I was super fine with at the time, because I was just happy to make music. And they were already an established band, and they had a sound that they kind of it evolved and everything, but essentially they had already established a sound that they kind of enjoyed. And I was like, yeah, I mean, they were all my friends. We had grown up together. So I was like, yeah, I'm here for the ride. And it was the funnest thing in the world is going on tour. So I was like, yeah, whatever you guys, I mean, you guys just write a song, I'll put some lyrics to it. And that's essentially for like 8 years how the band worked.
Man, that sounds like it's fun though. Touring sounds like I would fucking hate that. Even when I was in a band, I would always tell my bandmates that playing live was my least favorite part. I liked making the music and like doing the writing and recording and stuff.
I get that.
And then they would be so excited to have a show, and I would be like, ugh, all right, I'm glad I did it. Looking back, I'm like, oh yeah, it was fun, but I hated it. The idea of going on tour sounds like hell. I just don't think I would ever do it now.
No, it was terrible. It's the worst thing in the world. I love it.
Nah, man, not for me.
It's dumb as hell. Dude, it was so bad. And my problem is we would go on tour and I would, force these death metal vocals. And at the time I didn't have like really good screaming technique. So I would tear tissue in my vocal cords often. And then if you go like 2 days without brushing your teeth because you're on the road, you get an infection, or like I would get strep throat really bad. So, and we were like, this was not in a tour bus touring. This was in an Econoline van. Most of the time they wouldn't kick you out of church parking lots or Walmart parking lots. So we toured across America, mostly sleeping in that van, keeping the heat on in the winter, opening the windows during the summer.
That sounds awful.
It was the worst thing ever, but it's basically you and your friends going on a road trip, hanging out. We had so much fun, and we filmed such stupid videos, and the dumbest things in the world happened on tour. And you could get into fights, and you would be gone in 4 hours from that town and never see it again, maybe. So like you could do anything really.
Consequence free.
That was how it was. If promoters didn't pay us, we'd bust up their like venue or something, like, because we could just leave at any point. So who cares? We could do what we want. You throw the skateboards in the trailer, all the equipment and stuff, and we could be at a totally in a different state. So it was a fun time where I was young enough that I only had to worry about tomorrow's meal. And I was lucky enough to have a wife who was insane that stayed with me during that period. We had an apartment together, and for 4 months out of the year, I was gone, and for the rest of the time, I was working part-time jobs because no career is going to let you leave for 4 months on tour. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't positive in the sense that it had a good effect on the people around me, but man, there's nothing more fun than getting in a van, listening to like Boys II Men and Hatebreed back to back, and like just driving down some fucking West Coast highway, stopping at a truck stop, finding a cassette tape of a Skid Row album, and just listening to like Skid Row somewhere in the western part of the United States.
Not sure exactly where, but you were up there.
Never knew where I was ever. They didn't let me drive because I was a bad driver, and they didn't want to go to sleep with someone who they couldn't trust driving. So the entire tour, I was this ride. They'd be like, "All right, Joe, we're in Ohio it is." I had no idea.
Guess we're in Ohio today.
Yeah. I was very much go with the flow for that band, and I was just happy to kind of be there. It was dope.
Oh man, no, I couldn't have done that, dude. I don't even like driving 30 minutes. My gym is 20 minutes on the other side of town, and every time I'm driving there, I'm like, oh, I hate this 20-minute drive. Yeah. This sucks. Yeah, I can't stand driving, man. So I wasn't built for that. I want to be at home.
Yeah, I get that for sure. And it was weird. We didn't have the technology of today. We didn't have smartphones. I had a PSP. That was the highest tech I had. I had a Zune that I would put Korean movies on, and that's the best I had, But nowadays, I could just watch YouTube. It would be so easy for me to tour nowadays. Yeah, because I sit home all day and watch YouTube. Yeah, fuck it. I could just do it on the road, but just an internet connection while you're driving we had to print out MapQuest directions.
Hell yeah, that's classic.
Wi-Fi. Yeah, dude, that was a weird time.
What were you playing on that PSP?
I always had I had it hacked, so I had a bunch of PS1 ISOs on there.
That's what's up.
And I could play Metroidvania style games forever. So the GBA, Castlevania games, Symphony of the Night, the Mega Man games, and Suikoden's 1 and 2.
Man,
we're in the rotation.
There's so many Game Boy Advance games. I feel like, if you had a Game Boy Advance SP, like you never run out of options. Not all of them would be good, but
that was like a RPG powerhouse. Before the PSP came out, the GBA was like the console to get RPGs on, because you couldn't get as many on PS2 or GameCube as GBA.
I have yet to find, like, I've looked into it a lot because I'm obsessed with old Game Boy Advance games. It's so rare to see a video about a Game Boy Advance game do well, and that is so excuse me. That's so unfortunate because I want to make so many videos about Game Boy Advance games. So
for sure.
I've been sliding them into other videos. So I did that video about Van Helsing, and I talked about, I had like an entire section about just the Game Boy Advance version just because I wanted to play it.
Hell yeah.
Man, the Game Boy Advance was a great console.
Killer console.
Anyways, I think that's a good place to wrap up the interview, man. Thanks so much for
that's a good spot.
Yeah, GBA, talking about reminiscing about the Game Boy Advance. Thanks for joining me and hanging out and having a good conversation. Can you tell me about anything that you're working on that's coming out soon that people can look forward to?
Like you said, I have the Stalker 2 video that's out right now, and I'm really proud of that one, especially for the voice recording. That was a really long, fun project, and I felt like I was able to really get my emotions real clear on the script for that one. So that's nice. And I'm working on a Stalker console port video where I can talk about the 3 previous games. So if somebody likes Stalker 2, they could see where the series came from.
Yeah, that's a great next video after the Stalker 2 one, man. That's a good direction.
It should be coming out round about 2 weeks.
Okay. All right. Well, anyone who's watching this has that to look forward to. Make sure you head on over and subscribe to Jared's channel, Avalanche Reviews. There'll be a link for that in the description. And thanks everybody for tuning in and listening. And thanks again, Jared, for sitting down with us and having this interview.
Yeah, my pleasure, man. See you guys later.
All right. Bye-bye.